there it is. That, I believe, is your folks' place, Graham. Doesn't look a great deal different now to what it did when I was a kid. I'll come back to that in a moment. Now I'll walk to the local park. That's where you would have gone up towards Toorak Road and the walk to Auburn South. Through there would have been the brickworks in the old days. And down here is the local park. This probably looks a little different to your day, Graham, on account of the construction works that have gone on for the Southeastern Freeway just across the way there. Oh, that's interesting. Nice drain for kids to explore in the old days, no doubt. Local park. There's the street where we entered, way over there. Sorry about the wind noise, the camera's not too good in wind, Graham. I don't know whether this billabong would have existed in your time, but this is at the other side of the park from where you were domiciled. See, there are some top-knot pigeons there. Flighty little birds, you don't normally get this close to them. They must be fairly used to human contact. And there's one Australian native hen way over the other side somewhere. But now the constant roar of the freeway goes on beyond that, and it's impossible to get through to Gardeners Creek as it once was. Back to the street. I think this is the end of Parkin Street here. Coming up to the corner of Faircroft Avenue again. It's your house back through there, I think, Graham, your old house. I'll just see if I can zoom in on it there. Somewhere in the trees there. And this is the end of Faircroft Avenue. View here has probably changed greatly. Now in your diagram this would have been the start of the brickworks, and presumably this was the end of the road even then. I wonder if we can look through the gate here at anything in particular. Gate's locked, obviously. I think this was once upon a time a walkway, long gone now, once upon a time a walkway up to Taronga Village Shopping Centre, but I'd say it's long gone. There's the brickworks and Colesmeyer offices up on the hill up there, looking back down Faircroft Street. Corner of Faircroft and Parkin Street, and going up Parkin towards Tarak Road. Now, there's a historic site coming up that not many people are aware of. These may not be the original buildings that were here, but in 1929 the very first television engineer who ever lived in Australia, he was a friend of mine named Gilbert Miles, lived on the corner of Ricks and Parkin Street between 1929 and 1932. He was a pioneer of VHF radio communications, and I think he may have lived in that house there. So right on this site, the very first television transmissions in Australia, crude though they were in 1929, were received from 3UZ. They actually used 3UZ while it was in its nominal close down hours. It's either this corner house or that corner house from which those transmissions of television, the first in Australia, were received. More than, well, just on 85 years ago this month. And that's looking up Rick Street. Continuing up Parkin Street towards Tarak Road, there's a steep bit here. This would always have been a bit of a haul when you were going to school, I imagine, Graham. I know that there was a steep part of my daily school journey up Constance Street, Hawthorn, East Hawthorn. Similar to this, perhaps even a bit steeper. Tarak Road coming up. This, no doubt, would have been a familiar sight. I don't think actually many of these houses have been reconstructed since the 1960s. A great proportion of Camberwell across the other side of Burke Road has been redeveloped. So this remains substantially as it was. Ooh, steep hill. Pardon my heavy breathing, it's a hot afternoon. Midsummer here, of course, it's January 2014. And here's Tarak Road. Clifton Street just across the way. The view from Lawson Street. That's just about where the screen of the old Tarak Drive-In used to be. And if I shift around to take in the view back to Parkin Street, there it is. There's Tarak Road going up the hill beyond Burke Road. The Mowbray Street, Lawson Street and Bethune Street intersection. That's looking up towards Anderson's Park. Down here in the old days was, I think, the preschool down at Taronga Road. I'd forgotten how pleasant these streets were. Mind you, it's been a quarter of a century since I've walked down here at least. Very nice to be able to catch up by this new technical means, Graham, after all these years. Remember another walk we did from Collar Street, East Brighton, when you came down to help us in Brighton, or at least when I nominally was helping my parents with renovation of a house in Collar Street, East Brighton. We did a walk down Weir Street to the beach, and that must have been 1965. So it's a good, well, nearly half a century since all that happened. Coming up to the, what used to be the Hawthorn Tennis Club. I think it still is. This is Anderson Street, corner of Lawson Street. Up there to the right, beyond all of those hedges, in Widford Street was Wayne Barker, Ross Barker, and let's see, up there on the right, just a little way in a block of flats, was Chris Jablonski's place. Down there was what they used to call the Baby Health Centre. It's been greatly modified now, and beyond it, the former Bowls Club. Now it's part of the tennis club. Anderson's Park, as it is today. What do they call it? South Hawthorn RSL these days, not the Baby Health Centre anymore. And here are the ovals at Anderson's Park, where I used to come just about every Sunday as a kid. There's the tennis club in there. I'll walk up here a little way. Nice garden. This is where all the playground equipment used to be. But it appears that the playground equipment has been removed up there a bit. It used to be around here. There are the ovals. People still flying kites after all these years. You'll remember this, Graham. Oh, they got their kite flying. You can just see part of Auburn South's roof over there. Gee, this brings back memories. This is where I used to fly kites as a kid. I was sitting on those bluestone terraces there to watch the football games of Auburn South. A lot of people use the park these days. Here's a tree that I'm surprised to see still standing. Neil Florence and I used to climb that tree to give hell to the girls playing women's cricket down here on the top oval at Anderson's Park. Hasn't changed a great deal, to its credit. The style of kites changed. I don't think they invented parafoils in the early 60s. And at the age of 60, this is probably a good warning to us all as to what lies ahead. Anyway, these days you can see the city. Makes rather a different skyline to the one we remember, Graham. The buildings are taller. Anderson's Park again. There's the corner of Constant Street and Widford Street. And this home over here used to belong to Ivor and Ilsa Morgan. Ham radio station, call sign VK3DH. I knew Ivor very well in his final years. He died in 1977, born in 1908. And that's where he did many of his transmissions. His architect for that house, which was built in 1939, was Lloyd Hull, brother of Ross Hull, who was another radio pioneer. There's Constant Street, stretching off down to Taronga Road at the bottom. Anderson's Park, from the corner of Henham Street and Constant Street. Panorama of the lower and upper ovals. This is actually being taken on the 25th of January. This little picnic spot here is where my mother and I had I think it was my 8th birthday party. March 8th, 1962. 52 years ago, and at that stage this bent over pine tree was in a wooden picket fence. It's still there. Quite a bit of reconstruction going on here. There's the corner of Henham Street there. There used to be the Presbyterian Church around the corner, but I think that's long since gone. Quite a few of the original buildings have gone. There was a family that lived in a white house, I think it's there, where there was a shocking murder-suicide pact. One of our childhood friends was involved with that and didn't make it. That was 50 years ago. Constant Street, near the corner of Taronga Road. Used to be a church here. It's now been redeveloped as a block of dwellings. If I don't get run over by a car first. That's where the church used to be, right down there, corner of Taronga Road. Corner of Whitford Street and Murniong, where the old Islands Dairy is up to the right up there. And down here is Whitford Street, where Wayne Barker and Richard Barker used to live, Ross Barker. And down the end there, at the Anderson Street corner, Chris Jablonski. This White House is where Chris Bolsh's grandmother used to live years and years ago. We're in Taronga Road, and guess what, Graham? This is the crossing outside Auburn South Primary, where we went to school and met. And there it is. 50 years on. Well, 55 years on now. And this is the entrance, the front entrance, the Taronga Road entrance to the office of Auburn South. And gosh, it's not changed at all. I'm amazed. You might remember the principals who used to occupy that office on the corner there. Mr. Dunt, then Mr. McLaughlin, early 60s. Then I think it was Mr. Brogan who died in office that year. Over here, right in front of these windows, is where our 6th grade photo was taken 48 years ago, right there. I remember the camera that took us was a plate camera of the old type, taking glass plates. Now, I don't know what to expect around here. This is where this is where the milk used to be. Remember we used to have free milk issues? There's Burgess Street. This is where the milk used to be issued. Oh gosh, it's all built over now. There's Mr. Jones's room up the top. And there used to be fire escape stairs here. There used to be a gap between the buildings there. There's Mr. Jones's room up there. That is where we spent 1965, people. Up in that room. And I remember puzzling with Gary Van Dyck and Chris Jablonski as to what that hook was for, because even in 1965 its purpose had long been forgotten. I think it was an early school bell in the 1920s, as a matter of fact. And here's what's left of the quadrangle where we used to have assemblies. It seems so much smaller than I remember. The old entry to Mr. Jones' class up there is still there, but the wooden fire escape stairs that used to be next to it are gone. They're now metal fire escape stairs. Gosh, I remember going to my first day of school in here. Right in here. And up there, now I think those little windows on the corner there, that top room, was the old staff room. And the few times I went up there, it was a stench of tobacco smoke in the early 60s. You can still see the lower entrance here. That entrance door was where we came in the mornings in about 1961. And those troughs, though of course much newer than my time, were there in the 60s. Gosh. Right up there somewhere is where old Jonesy used to do the morning assemblies. And up inside there is the entrance to Jonesy's room. Up inside there. That's where I built my first gramophone disc recorder. I still have the recordings from that. Through here, room 2, I think it used to be called. That, unless I'm mistaken, the old first aid room is where I had my first day of school in 1959. Entrance to the hall down there. But the grounds have changed out of sight in 50 years. They used to be asphalt, now they're this synthetic grass. That tree wasn't there. Gosh, to think that that's grown up in the 50 years since. Prefabs used to be along here, where we used to sit and have lunch. And the cricket pitch, there's a little bit of the tennis court, or rather the basketball court left, not very much of it. That's where the shelter shed was. Canteen has shifted. That's Burgess Street out there. And that's the main oval. This is the western boundary of Auburn South, the bottom of the cricket pitches and the oval. That wasn't there in our day. You can just see the old building up there above us through the trees. That used to be completely unobstructed in the old days. And of course there's a famous area down here which we used to call the bank, the embankment. Nobody was allowed down there. The teachers used to create this myth that there were snakes living down there. Highly unlikely in 1960. Gosh, a lot of those houses have been rebuilt that are now in Heather Grove, I think, or I think it is through there. And there's a big tank down the bottom there. Up here is where the wood heap used to be. Oh, you can see the old building just poking above the trees there. Now it's changed. Grass isn't as long as I remember. They didn't cut it quite so often then. Anyway, there's the old building, what's left of what can be seen of it. Funny to think that we all started here 55 years ago. And this is where the girls' and boys' toilets would have been in the old days, where we used to reach into the furnace at the end of the toilet to pull out the change in shillings and pence from that was not reclaimed from school lunch bags that were sent down to the tuck shop. Boy, changes here. Pardon me making blowing noises every now and then, but there are a lot of flies, this being high summer. There's the old building. That room up in the corner there was where we spent most of 1964. Mr. Jacobs' class. Jacobs was a Melbourne footballer, 19 years old at the time. I thought he was so old. And he was in the premiership team for Melbourne in that year. These days they have a fire escape stair that comes out of that part of the world. Wasn't there in the 60s. To the left here was the caretaker's house, now long gone. Mr. Sherry had a nose like a blancmange and an accent like Sydney Halen. Very nasal. "G'day, young lad." He used to live in that area there. They don't have live-in caretakers in state schools anymore. Let's go up this new fire escape stair and get a view such as we would have from the window of Mr. Jacobs' class in 1964, 50 years ago. The view has changed a little. Changed a lot. There's the city. Rusden Teachers College, I think, is that building on the horizon there in Auburn Road. I remember looking out from this general area in 1965 and thinking that the ICI building was quite high, and that even has been demolished since. Well, there you have it, Auburn South as it is today. 50 years after our time, Graham. I wonder if you can see through the front door to where the drum room and the... Let's have a look. No, you can't see a great deal in there now. The drum room used to be on the left, and I think the principal's office. Anyway. There's the view to Taronga Road. There used to be garden beds that we worked on here, Alan McGavin. Do you remember? And down to the main front entrance to the school, through which I recall I came in 1958 when my parents were looking for a place to have me attend primary school. There's the view down Taronga Road. That used to be Freiberg's Milk Bar, just right down there. I remember the Mothers Club tried to undercut Freiberg's Milk Bar so that the kids didn't have to negotiate the somewhat hazardous Taronga Road, and I think that's why they originally built that road crossing there. Anyway, people, there you go, a return to Auburn South Primary School. 48 years after we left grade 6 and 55 years since we started here.